Hey everyone, and welcome back to Newegg TV. My name is Paul, and today I have a special video for you guys. It is about a new processor that has just recently launched from AMD. It's the AMD FX-9590, and it is nowhere to be seen here on the table in front of me. Well, it kind of is. It's actually right here, but this box is actually the box for the FX-8350, which is currently in here. I will explain. Okay, the 9590 is a new CPU from AMD, and basically it's the first ever CPU that's publicly available that has a frequency of 5 gigahertz. In fact, it's got a 4.7 gigahertz base frequency, a 5 gigahertz turbo frequency, so when conditions are appropriate, it will automatically overclock itself to 5 gigahertz. Now, there's some special caveats to bear in mind when you're dealing with the 9590. First off, in order to achieve this frequency of 5 gigahertz, AMD has had to apply a V-core of 1.5 volts, which is pretty high, pretty extensive when it comes to your typical desktop CPU. Along with that, they've had to increase the TDP, or the thermal design power, the amount of heat that the whatever cooling solution you're using needs to dissipate. So as a result, it's pretty much impossible to just go out and buy an AMD 9590 processor by itself. In fact, if you're purchasing from Newegg, it will be available in as part of a kit or a combo deal, so you can purchase it just to make sure that the additional hardware that you're buying along with the CPU is going to be able to handle the heat output, as well as to make sure that whatever system that you end up assembling, again, is able to handle the heat output and keep the processor running within its designated temperatures. So, all that being said, today's video is going to be about a few things. Of course, it will be a bit more detail on the FX-9590 processor itself. I'll be taking you through my personal build that I did just recently here in the Corsair Carbide 500R case to give you guys a little bit better of an idea of how to assemble a computer using this processor. And then we're going to end with just a few benchmarks to show you a bit of the relative performance gains that you might get by going with the 9590 as compared to the FX-8350. So let's jump in and take a closer look at this system. First off, when it comes to the case that you're choosing, this particular case I went with because it has a high amount of airflow available. You have a large intake fan here on the side. You also have a couple intake fans up at the front, which are pre-installed. So that's going to provide plenty of air coming in, which in part will help push the air out. Also, for exhaust up on the top, we're being helped along by our cooler, which is the Corsair H100. Personally, if you are looking at coolers right now and you're looking at the H100, I'm not even sure if it's still available. You might want to jump to the H100i, which is the newer version. But the CPU cooler is going to be one of the key components when it comes to building with the 9590. So definitely double check the AMD website for recommended coolers, but something pretty substantial like this one, which is a full 240 millimeter cooler, so 2 by 120 millimeter. It's got 220 millimeter fans up on top, helping to disperse the heat. And again, the closed loop liquid cooling solutions are just a great option for this, simply because you do want to move that heat away from the processor and out of the computer as quickly as possible. Again, particularly if you're running at 5 gigahertz. Now, apart from that, internal-wise, we got some AMD Gamer Series memory, just because, you know, it's an AMD build, so I went with AMD memory. We also have at the back the motherboard. That's another thing you guys are going to want to pay close attention to, is which motherboard you're using. This is the Gigabyte 990 FXA UD7 revision 3.0. There's a revision 1.1, which might not work out of the box with the 9590. Go with revision 3.0 if you're going with this board in particular. And there's some other boards from other motherboard manufacturers that are also compatible with the 9590 out there. Again, those will be available in combo deals, which you can pick up at Newegg.com. For a video card, which is required to have a discrete video card in this build, simply because the 9590 does not necessarily have an integrated GPU, such as some of the AMD FM1 or FM2 socket processors. We have an AMD Radeon HD 7970. That's just the reference design, as you can probably see, black and red. Apart from that, to power everything down at the bottom, we've got the Cooler Master V1000. It's a 1000 watt power supply, fully modular, 80 plus gold rating on that one. I tend to go a little bit overboard when I'm choosing a power supply for a build, simply because I want to have plenty of headroom in the future in case I want to upgrade or add an additional video card or something along those lines. This is a bit overkill for this particular build, but again, you'll find combos available on Newegg.com that have power supplies included in case you were curious about what might work better than others. Finally, for our storage, we simply have a Corsair Force GS 240 gigabyte SSD. And here's a quick look at me kind of assembling this entire system. It didn't take too long. I was really happy with the build quality and everything of the Corsair Carbide 500R computer case. It provided plenty of space, and it was really nice that it had the mounting solution already in place for the 240mm radiator, so that popped in nice and easy. And then of course the full complement of fans, so that right out of the box, without having to add any extra airflow, the system was able to get up and running. And all the temperatures have been well within range, as should be expected. I'm not going to go into detailed temperature benchmarks with this particular CPU, but I can say we didn't peak at more than 70, 72 degrees Celsius, which is about the max range that you're going to want to see with an AMD processor. Now here's a closer look at the CPU itself. I did want to show it to you guys, since it seems difficult to do a video without actually showing the product we're talking about. So as you can see towards the top there, you got 9590, that's the 9590. So this is kind of the flagship of the FX series right now. You also have the FX-9370, which AMD released at the same time as this one. It is slightly lower clocked and a bit less expensive than this one, so you guys can check that one out as well. That one has a TDP of 200 watts versus the 220 watt TDP of this one. The 8350, which I have the box for right there, but that's about all. That one had a TDP of 125 watts. Now internally there's not a whole lot going on that's different. We're looking at the same architecture. Both of them are 8-core processors. You get an 8 megabytes of L2 and L3 cache. DDR3 speeds officially supported of up to 1866. They're all unlocked. They all feature turbo core. This one does feature turbo core 3.0, which helps provide a little bit additional boosting when it's doing the overclocking. And then of course these are all AM3 plus socket CPUs. But let's go ahead and jump from there and take a closer look at our benchmarks. First off, we're going to take a look at our benchmark slide number 1, and this is our hardware, which you guys probably remember from the build I just showed you guys me doing. But nonetheless, it's the Gigabyte 990 FX UD7 revision 3.0. 16 gigs of AMD gamer memory. It's clocked at 1600 right now. Corsair H100 liquid CPU cooler. Corsair Force GS 240 gig SSD. Corsair Carbide 500R case. The Cooler Master V1000 80 plus gold power supply. And we're testing using Windows 7 Pro 64-bit. For CPUs, just to give you a comparison, I ran the FX-9590 at its stock speeds of 4.7 gigahertz base and 5 gigahertz turbo. And I'm also going to be comparing it against the FX-8350, which has a 4 gigahertz base and a 4.2 gigahertz turbo frequency. Our first test was PCMark 7, and this is a synthetic test, but it is a whole system test. I've selected some of the benchmark results here to share with you guys. The overall score, as you can see, 5,066 on the 8350, and we jumped up to 5,417 on the 9590. If you're comparing the clock speeds of these two processors, you'll notice that the clock speed of the 9590 is about 15–16% faster than the 8350. So we're going to see that reflected over and over in our tests as we run down all of them. Lightweight score, you can see similar results as well as the computation score. It also ran through a video transcoding test that's using the downscaling method, so that's imitating, for instance, re-encoding a 1080 video down to 720 or lower resolution so you can copy it over to a smartphone or tablet, for example. We also have an image manipulation test, and just so those results were readable, I did multiply that score by 100 just so it would appear on this particular chart. Next up is Cinebench. This is 11.5. It uses your CPU exclusively to render a high detail 3D image. Again, here we can see, I think this is about a 12% boost for the 9590, score of 7.79 versus the 8350 score of 6.85. Next up we have IDA64, and IDA64 actually has a whole suite of tests that you can run. I did focus on just a couple of them here. The CPU ZLib is a test that you can run with IDA64. It is an integer benchmark. It does a combined CPU and memory subsystem. It uses just basic x86 instructions, but again, here you can see the score jumps from 330 to 374 with the 9590. CPU hash is a CPU performance benchmark that uses actually most of the available instruction sets in the CPU, and this happens to be a test that AMD CPUs do very well at. You'll even see AMD CPUs outpacing many of the higher-end Intel CPUs with this particular test. But again, we saw the FX-9590 jump up to just shy of 4,600 in the overall score versus 4,111 for the 8350. Next up is 3DMark 11, and I know this is more of a graphics-specific test, but it does run some CPU tests as well. So what we're seeing here is reflective a lot of the AMD Radeon HD 7970 GPU that we have in there, but our overall score using the Extreme preset was 3,385. Our combined score was 3,882, and then the physics score, which is very dependent on the CPU in particular, we saw a nice jump of just about 8,500 versus the 8350 score, which was 7,181. And that's all for this video, guys. Once again, we've been taking a closer look at the AMD FX-9590, the first ever CPU that ships with a frequency of 5 GHz right out of the box. And remember, if the 9590 is too rich for your blood, you can also check out the FX-9370. I'm Paul with Newegg TV. If you enjoyed this video, you should maybe hit the like button right down there. Go ahead and subscribe if you'd like to check out more of our future videos, and we'll see you all next time.